Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating: Islamic psychology. Now, this is a field that sits right at the intersection of faith, modern science, and a history that is honestly way deeper than most of us realize. And it's going to challenge us to ask some really big questions, starting with the very word psychology itself.
So, let's just break that word down for a second. Psychology comes from two Greek words: psyche, which means soul or spirit, and logia, which means the study of. So, psychology at its root is literally the study of the soul, which you have to admit leads to a pretty obvious question. In a field that's all about understanding us, our minds, our behaviors, where on earth did the soul go?
And right there, with that question, we've hit on a major challenge in modern psychology. Because for all the amazing things it's taught us, the field we know today pretty much grew up by intentionally, and I mean intentionally, separating itself from anything spiritual. And in doing so, it created a framework with a really noticeable gap. Some scholars have a great name for this. They call it the psycho-secular bubble. Imagine you're a therapist, right? Especially if you come from, say, a Muslim background. You're being trained in these Western models that just don't have a category for your own spiritual values. They don't even acknowledge them. That creates this huge disconnect, not just for you as a practitioner, but it makes you wonder, can these tools really help everyone? And here's why that happened. You basically had two different ways of knowing that went down separate paths. On one side, you've got science, which is the foundation for secular psychology. It's all about empiricism. The rule is, if you can't observe it, measure it, and verify it, it doesn't count. But on the other side, you've got religion, which says, well, hold on, knowledge can also come from faith, from revelation. So you ended up with these two parallel tracks for understanding what it means to be human, and they weren't really talking to each other. You know, the incredible psychologist William James saw this problem coming a mile away, over 100 years ago. He had this perfect analogy. He said trying to describe a person without their spiritual side is like handing someone a menu and pretending it's the same thing as a full meal. Sure, the menu describes the food, but it completely misses the substance, the taste, the actual experience. So, if there's a split, how do you mend it? Well, this is where the integrated Islamic approach comes into the picture. It offers a framework that is specifically designed to bring that missing piece, the soul, right back into the heart of psychology, where it started. And this isn't some new age idea. It has a very old, formal name: Ilm el-Nafs. The translation is just perfect: the science of the soul. The whole goal here is to get a complete, holistic picture of a person by weaving together spiritual insights from the Islamic tradition with everything we've learned from psychology. Now, the absolute foundation for this entire framework is a core Islamic principle called Tawheed. It means the absolute oneness of God. And this part is absolutely crucial. This is not about taking secular psychology and just sprinkling a little religion on top. No way. It's a fundamental paradigm shift. It's about seeing all knowledge, including the science of who we are, through this central unifying lens. And you can kind of break Tawheed down into three big ideas that all connect. First, the idea of God's lordship, that he's the one and only creator. Second, the idea of worship, that all devotion goes to him alone. And third, understanding his names and attributes as something unique. When you put them all together, they create this really complete and coherent worldview that touches on everything. I love this analogy. Imagine you get a brand new, super complex, high-tech car, and the first thing you do is throw the owner's manual in the trash. I mean, you could probably figure out how to get it started and drive it around the block, but you'd never get how it really works, its full potential, or how to take care of it. Well, Islamic psychology looks at revelation, like the Quran, as that indispensable owner's manual for human nature. And I have to keep stressing this point because it's so important. This is not a modern invention. This is a revival. These ideas have an incredibly rich history that was flourishing for centuries, long before the psychology we learn in universities today even existed. This timeline really puts it all into perspective. You see the Greeks kicking things off, but then look at that huge period, from the 8th to the 13th century. That's the Islamic Golden Age, and that's when Ilm al-Nafs was thriving. This tradition is hundreds and hundreds of years older than the secular psychology that emerged in the West. So what's happening now is really about reconnecting with and revitalizing that incredible heritage. And the people from that era, their contributions are just stunning. Take al-Razi from the 10th century. Now, you got to remember, in many places back then, mental illness was treated with fear, with superstition. But what did he do? He set up some of the world's first psychiatric wards in Baghdad with a revolutionary focus, not just locking people away, but treating them with empathy, with respect, and with care. Or how about his contemporary, al-Balkhi? This one just blows my mind. Centuries, I mean centuries, before this distinction was made in the West, he was the first to separate neuroses, which he said were psychological, from psychoses, which he linked to the brain. That is a cornerstone of modern diagnosis, and he was writing about it in the 900s. And of course, there's the giant Ibn Sina, who you might know as Avicenna. He developed a technique that sounds unbelievably modern. He would literally monitor a patient's pulse while saying different names or places to see how their heart rate reacted. He was using the body's physical response to pinpoint a hidden emotional problem. That's essentially biofeedback 1,000 years ago. Just incredible.
Okay, so this is way more than just a cool history lesson. Reviving this deep intellectual tradition has everything to do with how we think about mental health and well-being in the world right now. It's incredibly relevant. So if you're going to take away 3 things from all this, let it be these. First, Islamic psychology gives us a genuinely holistic model. It brings the spiritual, the psychological, and the physical all together. Second, the history of understanding the mind is so much bigger and more diverse than what we usually learn. And third, this isn't just about the past. It's a living, breathing, contemporary conversation that's adding a vital perspective to how we all search for well-being.
And all of this leaves us with one final big question to think about. By bringing the study of the soul back into the picture, this tradition challenges all of us, really, to ask ourselves, what does a truly complete understanding of the human mind actually look like? Something to think about. Thanks for exploring all of this with me.